Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a book that's going to challenge pretty much everything you think you know about yourself, your past, and what it even means to be happy. It's The Courage to be Disliked, and it's our guide to the wild world of Adlerian psychology.
All right, so let's just jump right in with a question that I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. It's the big one from the book. Why do we feel so stuck? You know, we all have things we want to change about ourselves, but it just feels like we can't. Why is it so hard to break those patterns?
Well, it turns out the answer really depends on how you look at it. See, most of us, thanks to guys like Freud, think in terms of etiology. It's a fancy word for cause and effect. The idea is that your past, your traumas, your experiences, they cause who you are today. You're the effect of past causes. But Adlerian psychology comes along with this totally radical idea called teleology. This view says, nope, that's not it. We're not pushed by our past. We're pulled forward by the goals we have right now. We actually create our own feelings and behaviors to serve a purpose in the present.
And so right away, this brings us to the first huge myth that Adler wants to just completely tear down, and that is the idea that your past locks you in and that it determines your future.
Okay, check this out. The book gives this perfect example. There's this guy who is so anxious he can't even leave his room. Now, the old way of thinking would say, okay, what happened in his past? What trauma is causing this anxiety? But teleology flips that completely on its head. The philosopher in the book says, hold on, what if his goal, right now, is to not go out? He then creates the feeling of anxiety, which is a very real feeling, by the way, so he has a perfect reason to stay home. See the difference? The anxiety isn't stopping him from going out. He is using anxiety to achieve his goal of not going out. It's a total mind bender.
And that right there, that's teleology in a nutshell. It's all about the purpose of something, not its cause. So the big takeaway here is that we don't just suffer from our experiences, we use them. We pick and choose things from our past to build a story that serves whatever goal we have today. It's a huge shift because it puts all the power and all the responsibility right back in our own hands.
And Adler himself, he doesn't mince words. He basically denies the whole concept of trauma, at least in the way we usually think of it, as something that determines our lives. He's not saying bad things don't happen to us. Of course they do. But he's saying that no experience in and of itself is the cause of our success or our failure. We are the ones who decide what meaning to give it. We are self-determining. That's the key.
Okay, so if the past isn't the problem, if trauma isn't the life sentence we think it is, then what is the problem? Where do all our struggles come from? Well, this is where things get really interesting, and honestly, a little uncomfortable.
Adler says that all those things we think of as our personal, internal problems, that feeling of inferiority, our anxieties, our worries, they're not really internal at all. They don't just pop up out of nowhere inside our own heads.
In fact, he makes this incredibly bold claim. He says all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. Yep, every single one.
And think about it for a second, right? When do you feel inferior? It's always when you're comparing yourself to somebody else. When do you feel competition? When you start seeing other people as enemies to be defeated instead of its comrades. Adler's whole point is that if you were completely alone in the universe, none of these problems would even exist. Our suffering, it's born from our relationships with other people.
So that's kind of a bleak thought, right? If other people are the source of all our problems, what are we supposed to do? Go live alone in a cave? No. Adler says there's another way. There's a practical antidote to all this.
The big trap, the thing that keeps us stuck, is what he calls the desire for recognition. It's that constant need to be liked, to be praised, to get approval from other people. We spend so much of our lives trying to live up to everyone else's expectations, and that, right there, is the opposite of freedom.
And that leads to this really simple but, wow, incredibly freeing idea. You are not living to satisfy other people's expectations. Your life is yours. You're not here to be what your parents want or your boss wants or what you think your friends want you to be.
So how do you actually do that? This is the tool. It's called the separation of tasks. It's super simple, but it changes everything. For any situation, you just ask yourself, whose task is this? So let's say you decide to change careers. That choice, that's your task. Now, how your parents feel about it, if they're proud or disappointed, that's their task. It's not your job to manage their feelings, and it's not their place to make your life choices. You stay out of their tasks, and you don't let them interfere with yours. It's about drawing a very clear line.
Okay,
So we're letting go of the past, we're separating our tasks. What's the end game? What's the whole point of all this? Well, it's the big one, the courage to be happy.
But again, Adler's definition of happiness is probably not what you're thinking. It has nothing to do with getting recognized or being praised. It's not about fame or fortune. For Adler, happiness is simply the feeling of contribution. It's that quiet, internal feeling that I am of use to someone. That's it. It comes from seeing other people as your comrades on this journey, not your competition.
But, getting to that place of true freedom where you can just find happiness in contributing, it's not exactly a walk in the park. There's a cost. There's one last, really tough pill to swallow.
And here it is. This is the courage to be disliked. When you stop living for other people's expectations and you start living for yourself, some people are not going to like it. They just won't. And that's okay, because being disliked by someone isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's the price of admission for your own freedom. In fact, it's proof that you are free, that you're living by your own rules. And that is what it means to have the courage to be happy.